spend some time getting into this space. And one thing that the Vermont Truth and Reconciliation Commission has committed to is holding and hearing these stories with grace, empathy, and humility. And that's a commitment that we expect of everybody who participates in this process. And so, in order to open all of us together with that commitment and share that commitment, I'm going to invite us to go around and say, I commit or I'm committed. And so, again, that's a commitment to holding these stories, holding this process with grace, empathy, and humility. So I will start and say, I am committed.
I am committed.
Beautiful. Thank you all. You are committed. Sorry. Thank you for being committed. And something that to bring us all sort of into this space together again is, and to regulate us in the same way, is through a collective hum. So I am going to start humming, and then I invite you to join in, and we're just going to spend a little bit of time together humming. It tones our nervous system, grounds us into the space, and just helps us all arrive here together. So I will start, and you can join in as you feel ready on a hum all together. So. Mm. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. Welcome, and I will hand it over to the commissioners, and also to Lashanya to introduce herself.
Good morning. I'm Beth Washday. My name is Lashanya, and I have the privilege and honor of being the other half of the GARE team with M. Welcome.
And next, we're going to have our land acknowledgement.
Good morning, everyone. I am the city manager for the city of Winooski. My name is Elaine Wong, and I have the honor of doing our land acknowledgement today. In 2022, the city of Winooski created a land acknowledgement and land use rights resolution in partnership with the Abenaki community. I'm paraphrasing that today in today's land acknowledgement. The indigenous peoples of Vermont were the first inhabitants of this land. Winooski is located within Indakina, the homeland of the Western Abenaki people. I'm probably not saying either of those words correctly. And is named after the original Abenaki word, Winooskattuk, or Wild Onion Land River, not Onion Land River, in relation to the Winooski River in Vermont. Using indigenous names is an important step towards addressing the erasure of indigenous presence from the landscape. As far as I know, Winooski is the only city or town in Vermont with an Abenaki name. We take this opportunity to reflect on the shameful history of harm done to indigenous people and to be humbled by the total scope of our history, which predates municipal incorporation. The city of Winooski formally acknowledges that this community was built upon the unceded land of the Abenaki people, and we recognize that the Abenaki people, their culture, and their experiences are fundamental to the existence and culture of our city. The city endeavors to maintain a meaningful and permanent partnership with the Abenaki people. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce the video. We're going to watch just a really short clip we were trying to find a poem or something to ground us in the day, and I thought this was really beautiful. So it is a piece that a music teacher did in Canada for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and it's a lovely musical piece. So just enjoy and think about opening ourselves up to truth and all that means. So.
Truth walks softly, whispers low, through the trees where rivers flow, a story told, a seed we sow. Step by step, hand in hand, truth and love will heal the land. Step by step, hand in hand, this is our time to understand. Flutes sing high, the drums beat deep, wounds to mend, promises to keep. The earth remembers, it does not sleep. Listen close, the echoes call. One voice rises, it speaks for all. Step by step, hand in hand, truth and love will heal the land. Step by step, hand in hand, this is our time to understand. The sun and moon, they guide the way, through darkest night to brightest day. The path of truth is never gone. We walk together strong as dawn. Step by step, hand in hand, truth and love will heal the land. Step by step, hand in hand, this is our time to understand. The sun and moon, they guide the way, through darkest night to brightest day. The path of truth is never gone. We walk together strong as dawn.
Thank you very much for that wonderful opening. Now we're going to go a little bit over I'm the event facilitator. My name's Roderick Owens. I'll be guiding us through this morning and afternoon. The goal is to, keep pace and uphold our agreements. And I just want to remind everybody of our working pledge. As we explore complex and challenging topics such as race, disability, oppression, and discrimination, we collectively pledge to approach these discussions with a commitment to extend grace, humility, and empathy with each other. We recognize that we're all on both an individual and collective journey to dismantle oppression and discrimination from our culture and systems. Therefore, we pledge to cultivate dignity and respect even in moments of disagreements and discomfort. We expect and accept non-closure with what we engage in as we engage in courageous conversations with curiosity and an open mind. We dedicate ourselves to refrain from judgment, embrace active listenings, and use I statements to foster open communication. In this space, we understand the platinum rule, where we pledge to abide by each other's unique preferences, therefore building better relationships and collaboration. We come into this with good intentions, but also recognize that when we do not intend to do harm, there is an impact. We commit to prioritizing Act 128 communities and acknowledge that there is no such thing as a single issue struggle. Our lives are interconnected. We vow to treat each our stories, our dreams, and struggles with sacred care. We honor vulnerability. We embrace the spirit of co-creation. We affirm that we are the active agents of change, and we are committed to doing the work to create understanding amongst and with each other. The journey to collective liberation is filled with discomfort and painful truths, but the final destination is community where everyone can thrive together. This is a shared space grounded in the principles of this pledge. Okay. Yes, there she is. Now, our executive director.
Good morning, everyone. I have some logistical pieces I'm going to go over. First, my name is Faith Yakubian. I use she, her, they, their pronouns. I am the executive director for the Vermont Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and it's a pleasure to see everyone today. So just to get through some logistics that all of which are important, and some gratitude. We want to thank Winooski High School, Middle School for providing the space for us today, for working with us since this summer to make this happen here. A few accommodations and safety and team details, including what you can expect for lunch. People's Kitchen will be with us quite shortly, and they will feed us and fill our souls and our stomachs. We'll break bread together at that time. To my left are the ASL interpreters, Jeremy Sheffield and Christina Dixon. We want to thank you for being here with us today to make it possible for everyone to participate fully. Also to my left is the screen. You will notice the subtitles, and they will run throughout the time we're together. One of our accessible goals, or one of our goals, is to make things very accessible, multi-communication, so that everyone can participate fully. We are joined by members of the CCTV Center of Media and Democracy, Stephen, Jordan, and Matt. We thank you for being with us, along with Jake, who is a tech person here. And we have, these folks are just invaluable to our process. Thanks to CCTV, this is live streamed and recorded, so folks will be joining us online and can witness and engage at a later date. We are also joined by the documentarian, Dr. Vandor Williams, and our talented colleague, Akila Dadi. We thank them for being here too. Accessible bathrooms are at the entrance. You probably noticed them and you're walking past the registration table. They are to the left. And for the gender, non-specific gender bathroom, so a gender inclusive bathroom, is in the entrance towards the left before you enter before you pass the registration table. I want to thank our volunteers for today, Ron and Fran and Alian. They have supported us. They've been present today. They have done odd jobs, and I want to thank them for doing anything and everything we've asked them. For our collective and individual health, we have hand sanitizers, we have masks. You can gather those or take some of those at the front of the registration table as well. And also for safety reasons, we have Dan and James from Chocolate Thunder with us today to ensure, again, all of the space is respectful and safe. Our beloved care team is with us, and LaShania, who spoke recently, not too long ago, are present to support the truth tellers and our collective readiness, along with Dr. Rachel D. Simone, who's here to do craniosacral support for the truth tellers, and that is an option. Lastly, I want to thank our community partners who are here today, Rakima from the People's Vermont Professionals of Color Network, and Jean Hamilton, who is here as well. Hi, Jean, who's here from the Land Access Opportunity Board. Please stop by those tables. And also, please stop by and see Aurora Berger, who is our artist in residence, and she is here to provide artistic ways of expression. And we are hoping that, and we will, put together the art pieces for an installation in a public venue. We're hoping the State House at a later date. You're also welcome to speak with Michelle Olvera, who is our general legal counsel, and Liz Harrington, who are here today for private truth tellings and also just to help folks navigate some interpretation of law. You're welcome to talk to them about that, specifically Michelle. And with that, you've heard enough from me, so I'm going to turn this over to the commissioners.
Thank you, Faith. Is it working? Okay, good. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Mia Schultz. I'm one of the commissioners. I'm here with Amanda Garces and Melody Mackin. I am to speak to our theme today. And I made it a little bit personal. 10 years ago, when I first arrived in Vermont, I was struck by the sheer beauty of this place. Pictures could never capture it. The land speaks to you when you're here. Through the green mountains, the waters, the open skies, it's breathtaking in a way that makes you feel both small and held. But over time, as I grew more aware of the culture that dominates here, I also became more aware of what's hidden underneath that beauty. I learned what I first saw as openness is in so many ways tightly controlled. The land is gatekept. Its resources are hoarded. Its beauty is manipulated through the same colonial systems that first claimed it. And the truth is, colonization has never ended here. It simply shifted shape. As a commissioner, I've seen how this plays out in real time. The same mindset that once claimed ownership over this land at the expense of indigenous people continues today. It hoards resources, pushes out those deemed unworthy, and forces assimilation onto everyone, including those who were first lived here. Now, when we talk about land and resources, some people may picture forests, farms, water, or housing, and that's true. But land and resources also shows up in the systems that touch our daily lives. You will hear truths today from people who have faced harm in education settings, in potentially healthcare settings, in court systems, and criminal justice. These might seem separate from land, but they are deeply connected. Because who controls the land controls the schools that are built on it. Who controls the land decides where hospitals are placed, who has access to clean water, and who can afford to stay in their community. Who controls the land decides which neighborhoods get invested in and which are left to crumble. Who controls the land and its wealth has the power to shape the laws, the courts, and the cages. So when someone is denied access to quality care, that's about resources. When a student is punished instead of supported, that is about who is seen as deserving to belong here. When a person is targeted by the criminal justice system, that too is tied to land, because incarceration itself is about removal, about uprooting people from their homes, their communities, and their right to live free on the land. And that is why the theme of land and resources is not abstract. It is not separate from our daily lives. It is the ground on which all these systems were built. As we listen to truths spoken today, I ask you to hold this question in your heart. Who is being allowed to access the beauty and wealth of this land? And who is being denied? The answers you will hear will show us that colonization is not a history lesson. It is an ongoing practice. And if we want true reconciliation, we must reckon with how land and resources are still being used to exclude, to control, and to harm. Thank you all for joining us today to bear witness. And now we will invite our first truth teller to join us on the stage. Oh, why don't I pass that to you real quick?
Okay, so we just wanted to mention quick that the reason we have these baskets, and there's several baskets over there on the table, is Brenda Reynolds from the Canadian TRC. She gifted us with this ceremony to do, and so we will have a ceremony at the end. We're collecting all of the tears. Maybe don't include snot. Just like collect the tears, and you can put them in the baskets, and then we will burn them as an offering at the end, and hopefully as a symbol of healing. So thank you to Brenda Reynolds from the Canadian TRC for gifting us with that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. That's good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Creighton Jones, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my brother, Eric Jones. And this is his truth. I want to start off by reading you a letter that I wrote to the Burlington mayor in regards to what happened with my brother. Good afternoon, Mayor. My name is Creighton Jones, Jr., and I'm writing to you this afternoon in regards to an incident that took place in January. I've also reached out to the Burlington Free Press and the ACLU with no response. Before I continue, I want you to know that I am coming to you out of respect and fairness, as I'm sure you weren't informed in detail of the situation. My first instinct was to contact the Vermont Digger and other media outlets about this incident, as it's been a month since I've emailed the Burlington Free Press and ACLU and haven't heard a response. After some time, I realized this would only blindside you and wouldn't be fair to you. It wouldn't have given you the respect and chance you deserve to address this situation, and for that, I apologize. Mayor, I am writing this on behalf of my brother Eric Jones, as his older brother. My brother was the gentleman involved in the Burlington Police Department incident where he brought a knife and a quote-unquote butcher knife to the department a few months ago. This incident was soon after released to the public via the news and social media outlets, and he was looked at as a man that was another criminal catch and release, as his records were also released to the public in the process. He was seen as being part of the general population and as someone you need to protect yourself from, someone that needs to be put away. Eric is a man with a physical and mental disability as well as a mental illness. He has autism and is mentally delayed, and this puts him in the form of a 10 to 13-year-old at times. His physical disability makes it so that he can't protect himself if he needs to, and his dexterity is limited. He can barely zip a zipper. On this particular early morning, after my mother left for work, he left the house and headed for the police department. Eric has also struggled with schizophrenia for the last few years, and the illness is being regulated better as time goes on. I'm not saying or making an excuse for his actions, as they were very wrong, but his personal history was omitted from the news and media outlets. The state of Vermont, Burlington Police Department, Burlington Fire Department, Fletcher Allen Healthcare, all know who Eric Jones is and how much of a threat he isn't, in that he needs extra care and is getting it. Eric used to bring homemade chocolate chip cookies to both the fire and police departments. The fact that this information was not released to the community and my brother was labeled as a threat by the public was irresponsible, dangerous, and manipulative. Irresponsible and dangerous because he is a man with the mind of a 10-year-old that can't physically, let alone verbally, defend himself at times. He is unaware of and can't comprehend most social situations. All of this with him being in the care of my mother, who is very capable of taking care of him, but is older and a single mother. We all know how the community reacts to threats to the public. Sometimes there's an overreaction, and people like to take things into their own hands. They come after those threats, and unbeknownst to them, because of their omission of information, they don't realize those people can't defend themselves and are harmless. This was also manipulative because of the omission of Eric's condition. If his disabilities and actual history were released, the public would not have been in the uproar they were in, causing my family to have to defend my brother in every way possible. This just so happened to be done during a budget week for the department, which they later passed. My brother, a man with autism, a physical and special disability who has the mental illness known by said department, was used to pass the budget. A man with a special disability was used as a stepping stone by the Burlington Police Department for more money. I understand that more police are needed. I support this, as I know Burlington is starting to suffer due to a lack of it. But for the sake of safety, morals, and ethics, this is what was done to a man with special disabilities in his family. All in all, the release of information about Eric was morally and ethically wrong. The omission of his condition to the public was deceitful and irresponsible. If you were to meet Eric in person because of the news and what was released, your response would be, "Oh my God," because it painted a complete opposite picture of who he is. The man, mentally and physically, couldn't hurt a fly. I'm reaching out to you today to help me hold those involved accountable. I refuse for my brother and family to be collateral damage for someone's financial gain. The police department and certain media outlets need to be held accountable for misinformation. I say misinformation because legally, as we all know, omission is seen as a lie in the eyes of the law, and they did it to the entire city of Burlington. How can you trust your local police department when they show this kind of integrity? My brother couldn't protect himself, and my mother just wanted to let it go. I'm here to defend them, and my goal is to shed light on this situation, to prevent it from happening again to someone else. Mayor, I am a veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom and a former Vermont Army National Guardsman, whom I deployed with. I served as the medical non-commissioned officer for the mobile COVID task force, in which we made sure communities had access to COVID testing so they could return to work. I'm also a former teacher and paraprofessional who taught at the Integrated Arts Academy, the same elementary school I attended when it was called H.O. Wheeler. I am now a professional actor and part of SAG-AFTRA, and have recently moved back to Vermont from LA and New York to give back to my family and community, the same community I grew up in and want to give hope to, as I'm sure you want to as well. I will also end this by adding that the quote-unquote butcher knife that was brought to the station was actually a 5-inch charcuterie board cheese knife. Thank you for your time. Very respectfully, Creighton Jones. This is the letter that I wrote to the Burlington City Mayor, as well as some outlets that I stated in the letter. Mind you, this was written to them in May. And after no response, I have further decided to reach out to other sources for help. And that's where I met you folks, which I greatly appreciate. And I just needed this to be seen. So it doesn't happen again to someone of my brother's likeness who doesn't have a voice or feel like they don't have a voice. So, yeah. After I sent the letter, I heard nothing. And then when I sent what I would call a final notice, their office got in touch with me, and they CC'd their email response to someone else and said that this person who was outside of the office would email me, someone that it felt like didn't have anything to do with them or why I was contacting them. It felt like they were just trying to brush it underneath the rug. And I didn't hear from anyone. And so that's when I decided to, I gave them a few weeks, and that's when I decided to just reach out, do some social media justice, if you will. And that's when I was reached out to by you fine folks. Now, I'm all about giving a chance. And I wrote to the mayor because it is essentially their department that they're in charge of. Instead of taking that abrupt turn myself and just throwing everything out there, I wanted to fight fair, if you will, give everyone a chance to do the right thing. Now, as you know, it's October. I started this process way in the beginning of May, and this is the respect and lack of response that I've received since then. So, the Burlington Police Department later passed their budget. Very, very soon after, my brother was printed on every newspaper and media source, and yeah, it just seemed very coincidental, if you will. And there was no mention, as I said in this letter to the mayor, of his condition at all. If you were to read this and take it at first face value, you would think that he was just someone that was part of the general population, that it was just someone like me or you walking down the street that just didn't care about anything and just decided to just go into the department and do whatever, My brother, for clarity, you might ask, why did he bring knives or what have you? Some folks with autism, they wander with no direction. They just leave. They just get up and go. There's been times where we've had to pick up my brother and get the police and fire departments involved. I'm like, Eric, where are you going? And we live in the Old North End in Burlington. We'd ask him, Eric, where are you going? And he would say, Rutland. Like, who do you know in Rutland? Why? Just because I wanted to, There was one time when he decided to do this, and he got hurt by a stranger. So that prompted him to, from that point forward, bring something with him. And this is one of those instances. It's late at night, and he decides to get up and go and kind of break out of the house. And he unfortunately took things with him. And here we are.
So, part of our commission is to discuss the things that have been lost. And this particular theme about what has been lost is about land and resources.
Yes.
How do you connect what has been lost from this process for you and your family and your brother?
Sense of trust for the community that's supposed to help, assist, protect us. And when speaking on resources, it kind of connects to the budget that was passed that benefited them and the greater community, but to the expense of someone and their disability. I feel that had that been included, there would have been a lot more questions, said by the public. Is he getting help? Is he okay now? There were times when myself and my brother-in-law were defending my brother online because he was being ran through the mud. They know who my brother is, but they didn't know it was that Eric Jones. And once I made it clear, all of their social media posts regarding him were deleted. It kind of speaks to who he is and how the city of Burlington, or just the community in general, know Eric. and what his true nature is. So. He is very gentle. He's very charismatic. Would love to talk your ear off about natural disasters that he decides to look up at 2 o'clock in the morning, that there was a 2.3 earthquake in Taiwan, wants to make friends with you over Land Before Time and tell you that there's a Land Before Time 15 coming out next year. That's him, and he's 35. You know, I call him my little brother. And that's that. I mean, and it's mostly due because of how he is. I see him as my little brother, not my little brother that's only a few years younger than me, but my actual little brother. You know, so.
What would you have liked to see be done differently from the beginning to today? From the incident to the way the response to the incident was?
I would have liked better care for someone that has a disability, physically, mentally, who has mental handicap, illness. I would have liked to have seen better care taken, more gentleness. There was just a lack of care when it came to releasing his information. And it's heartbreaking because if I didn't say anything, who would? It would have just been let go. It was hard to see or watch this from California, where I was living on and off for a time, and not be able to do anything about it. And he's the reason why I moved back entirely full time. Because I would come back home and help out Mom, you know, when she needed it with him. So I would have liked for there to be greater care by those folks that are supposed to protect and serve us. As I said before, I'm for more uniform, more officers in the community, because I've seen what has happened to Burlington in its time over the years. But with that being said, there needs to be that recognition of responsibility that they know that they have for its community. If I'm protecting you, I'm going to show you in every way that I'm protecting you and that I'm here for you, and that you can trust me. I'm going to do my best in every way possible to make sure you don't think otherwise. You know, if I'm wrong, I'm going to state that I'm wrong. You know, if I'm right, yes, I'm gonna stand 10 toes to the line and tell you that I'm right. You know, we all need to take responsibility for what we do, good, bad, and indifferent, especially when you hold that kind of responsibility.
I guess I would like to, outside of the incident, do you feel there are resources to support your family with Eric? Is Eric feeling supported?
That is another topic. It's, yes, it's been a struggle. But we are doing the best we can. My mother is an angel. She has done this for all 35 years of my brother's life, you know, at 63 now. And with the resources she's been given, has been doing the best that she can. While, yes, we feel that there should be more resources being given, or we wish that there was more. Let me backtrack. So Recently, at the tail end of this, there was thought of placement for Eric and him being taken out of the home, my mother's home, and so we fought against that, you know, and it's ridiculous to see because we did our research. A caregiver that's not my mother is paid. We saw online and is paid around $85,000 a year to caretake someone, you know, like my brother. And it makes you think, okay, if you have those kind of funds for a stranger, an individual, to take care of someone, why not give that part of those funds to the family to help assist them, you know, with that person, you know, whether it's more security for the house or maybe an aid for a couple hours, what have you. Why all of a sudden skip a step in between and just say, well, we see this for him and this is what's going to happen. And so we've been fighting that for the last few months, at least since July. So he's still home, you know, fortunately, but we're still fighting the good fight. So
Can I take you back to the incident?
yes,
When your brother arrived at the police station with the weapon that they called a butcher knife, how did they react and what happened to him?
They took him in, they processed him, they disarmed him. You know, he wasn't hurt. You know, the officer was in between duty. I wasn't sure if he was coming or leaving, but he was in civvies. Sorry, he wasn't dressed in uniform. But after that, my mom came in and took care of him, I believe. And I was told about this the next day. You know, I'm already across the country. But yeah, what ensued within the next couple of days was almost automatic. Hey, we found this guy. This is what happened. You know, when it was on the news, it was on the websites of certain news outlets that are particular to this area, and yeah. So
When did they recognize your brother's disabilities? Or did they? In any of the during the incident?
they did recognize Eric and what's going on with him, but that was never mentioned at all in any of the articles, you know. And it's to be straightforward, it's sad that when you have the department and its members come up to you and say, I'm so sorry for what happened to your son. This is what my mother and what some officers did, because they know my mother. Apologize for the articles that they read. It speaks volumes. If someone's able to go out of their way like that outside a department and apologize because they know that it's wrong. And, you know, that's what happened. So what do you do with that afterwards?
Is there anything else that you want to discuss?
No, I just hope that we all as a community can do just a little bit better. Give help the way we would want help to be given to us, and care. especially if we hold higher positions that are meant to help those around us. Not forget where we come from, big or small. I hope that we can all just do better in the end for each other, for each other's sake. Absolutely.
And don't forget the art over there. Everybody can participate. You can do some art while you listen to.
My name is Kathleen. I'm a Black, queer, cis, disabled woman. I'm also a leader, a mom, an agitator, a co-conspirator, a teacher, and a lover of soca and reggae music. I carry fierce survival genes and strength from my ancestors that allowed me to overcome a myriad of barriers since I moved here in 1973. Belonging comes in all shapes and sizes, visible and invisible, hidden and made, chosen and found. That's a quote by Sarah Sentiels. Why do I feel like I don't belong? Is it because when I needed resources, I found nothing? Is it because I spent so much time and effort negotiating with stakeholders to establish resources towards creating a sense of welcome, inclusive community, that there was then no opportunity for me to benefit from them? I shall share a couple of experiences that I've had. The leading, I think, driving event that happened in high school when I was 15 contributed to my sense of not feeling like I belong in Vermont. So I came to Vermont as a 15-year-old with an Angela Davis afro and platform shoes. I refused to wear a hat or boots for years because it would ruin my look. However, my joy and my pride in my identity was smashed when I was walking through the halls of the school one day and there was an auction in the cafeteria. It was slave day, and my classmates were crawling around on the floor, chained and doing stupid shit at the behest of their, quote, owners. This went on for the 3 years that I was at this particular high school in Chittenden County. And I raised the concern to faculty and staff and fellow students. And my concern was met with, oh, we're just having fun. I believe in my junior year, the school attempted to address the lack of African American history in the books and hired a white man to teach a class called The Black Experience. What was a white man going to teach any of us about the Black experience? I took the class, and I think that I was probably more the teacher than that white man was. Years later, or a year later, on graduation day, I did graduate with honors. I had dyed my white tassel red, black, and green the night before and I was not allowed to wear it. Welcome to Vermont, now go home. I didn't know what that meant. It sounded odd. I'm 15, 16, 17, trying to have a good time. But I learned. I tried college for a year. I was surrounded by a majority white students who had money, they had cars, and their complaints were having to go to the Caribbean with their family on the Christmas vacation, and I didn't have money for pizza. So I left, got a job, a couple jobs, and then landed at a local computer manufacturer and was harassed by a black HR rep who wanted to have an affair and made a hotel reservation for us to meet up. In between, I found out he was married and had children, and I said, nope, not doing that. And I continued to work at that business for a long time, in terror and fear of what my career, what turn it might take, knowing that that man was angry with me. I had children, went on to have children and get married. And during the spring, when my firstborn was ready for kindergarten, had to meet the teacher and do some silly test, like, do you know what a spatula is or something? I barely remember what was said, because while we were waiting outside the room, the current class and students were lining up to go to music or someplace so that the teacher could sit with us and have our interview. A little girl standing in the front of the line looked at my brown 5-year-old and said, "Another black kid, yuck." So that was my reintroduction to this same school system, but with my child. By the time I got home, we lived close by to the school. My phone was ringing as we're coming in the front door, and it was the guidance counselor. The teacher had shared the incident, my story, with the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor wanted to talk. That began a long relationship where I became the consultant, unpaid, walking them through things. I told them I had a dream. I wouldn't be nice to walk into the school and be welcomed by all 5 senses. You know, I wanted to smell jerk chicken coming from the cafeteria. Could we see things in other languages? Could we hear music from other places, you know, that were inclusive? And I proceeded to become the resource. I finally said no more because you're not paying me. Let me know how that lesson goes, and our relationship shifted. I planted myself in that school. I volunteered, and then I started sitting down with the principal, my son's current teacher for that year, and the guidance counselor, because I said, we're going to start talking about race. And so we did. No particular agenda. I said, we're just going to start talking about it because you've got my son in your school. Again, I'm doing this all by myself. I'm confident. I know I'm doing the right thing. It was the way I was raised, but I did it alone, and I needed a resource, but I had to become the resource. As a shopper in the area, Barnes & Noble had moved to downtown, and I went in looking for books that looked like my kids, that looked like me, And I found that the African American section of books was way in the back in the corner on the bottom shelf, and it didn't even fill a shelf. So I went to the management and I said, this isn't okay. What are we going to do? It changed. I don't know if it would have changed without me, but I insisted that that change. I became aware that there were skin color crayons and different skin tone Band-Aids and things like that, so I started looking for them locally. Didn't find them. Contacted the management and said, can you start stocking these? And they did. And then I started sharing with friends and families and schools and guidance counselors. Kid was in middle school now, and the other two were in elementary. You know, again, I would have preferred to go into the store and buy those things because they were already stocked, but they weren't. So I tried to affect that resource for all of us. Then I fell in love with inclusive children's books. I didn't want to read anything else, and I'm like collecting them for our library at home, and I'm looking for them in the local library. I'm looking for them in my church library. I'm looking for them in the Peace and Justice bookstore. At the time, they had a good selection, but it wasn't good enough for me. So I started working with managers of these spaces and saying, have you seen this book? You should order it. And they were like, okay. And I would say, order 2 or 3 copies. One's for me, or 2 are for me, but I'm going to share that you have this book with the local elementary school. I'm going to go to the library and say, next time you order, could you order these books? And so I did that for a while. It was exciting. But again, I would have preferred to go into the library at my church, at the school, and downtown, and have the books already on the shelf. At my place of worship, they weren't dealing with race, and they had me and my kids, so they were going to deal with it. So I helped establish the Anti-Racism Action Committee with a whole lot of resistance, but we did it. Brought in speakers and workshops. I'm sad to say that particular place of worship really hasn't gone much further. Maybe they've even slipped back, and I'm not very involved there anymore. I had the opportunity to get involved in foster care. Became a foster parent. Joined the team of folks that train foster parents who are interested in getting their license. Noticed in the curriculum there was no discussion about race. We talked about addiction. We talked about sexual abuse. We talked about criminal acts. We didn't talk about race. And they said, would you like to talk about race? Sure. So all I could do was, to keep it light, I told this funny story. I was fostering at that time. We were fostering a little white boy with straight hair. I used clippers on my kid's hair, and I didn't know what to do with his hair. And most foster parents are white, and their complaints were, I don't know what to do with the black kid's hair, so I flipped it. I opened the discussion and had everybody laughing. But again, it was becoming the resource. Yeah. So I changed jobs. I was working for a university in Chittenden County. I was physically harassed for a bunch of reasons. And I was also just shut down when I wanted to make changes or suggested changes, like including other languages in the, because HR, it's all that jargon and benefits information and decisions and deadlines, and everyone deserved to have easy access to all of that complicated information. And I got a lot of pushback. And then reluctantly, at one of our staff meetings, it was announced. And there was some comment to, like Kathleen asked for. they created things in different languages. So, welcome to Vermont, go home became quite clear. The meaning of that was felt deeply by me. I went on to work. I'll just go to what I'm doing now. I'm a guest teacher, and I think that I'm a guest teacher in elementary schools in Burlington. And I think in some way I'm healing myself, because my absolute goal with every child in any classroom that I'm in is to make sure that they belong. And I specifically look out for the children who are having a tough time. I focus on them. And I've made a commitment to never write down the name of a struggling child in any report at the end of the day to the teacher if that child was brown. I refuse to handle notification and care of brown children in my care in any way that I don't think is suitable. I call on the professionals in the building and I speak to them directly. I could tell a lot more stories. But I'm home. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere.
Is it on? It's on? Kathleen, first I want to say thank you for being a pioneer. Thank you for standing up. I'm going to ask you about, because that's about our theme of resources and what's been lost, being in particular giving the emotional labor and love to your community to make it more inclusive and belonging. What has that done to you? Has anything been lost?
What I lost was the opportunity to just be, to feel like I belonged without the labor to create spaces where myself and my family could belong. I think I lost, some innocence and just the joy of being a student. I loved school, but I didn't want to have to explain what happens to my afro when I wash it and things like that. And by the way, I said it fucking gets clean. What happens to yours? Yeah, I think I lost the opportunity to not be on, to not be the reference, to not be the example, to not be the resource. I lost the freedom to spend my energy and live my life without those worries. That's what I lost.
So there's a lot of that has to conspire for the feeling of not being home, right? And so what is the recommendation that you have for all those systems that didn't have the guts to say you're home?
Well, having taken courses towards my MED, which I did finish in education, there were, again, in those courses, I was the reference, or I was the one that pointed out what was missing, what would be helpful. And so I would want any sort of educational institution and program that is going to work with children of color to hit on that big. I used to say to that elementary school that I went to, my son started at, I'm here to save my kid's life, but I also believe that these children should be learning to live in the world. They're potentially world citizens. So let's raise them so that they're capable of being that world citizen, whether they end up living in Winooski, where I live, or Washington, D.C., or Budapest, or Seoul, Korea, or Montego Bay, Jamaica, and succeed, that they're prepared to be world citizens, kind world citizens, and that they have a real good chance of succeeding. So I believe that the educational institutions that are churning out psychologists, psychiatrists, teachers, folks that are going to be working with children need to up their game and come out not so ill-informed. Medical school, all of it, all of those educational spaces that claim their 5 stars.
We so appreciate you having the courage to tell us years and generations of harm and lack of belonging. Is there anything else that you want to talk about with us today?
I don't think so, but I have gotten up the nerve now, I'm sure of it, to ask for a letter of apology, having survived Slave Day at the high school that I graduated from.
Who would you like that apology from? The school? The state? Everyone?
Who? Maybe I'll pose the question to them, because the assumption is there will be an apology. Who do you think it should come from? I'll lead the discussion with that.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Kathleen. I'll meet you halfway.
Thank you guys so much. We'll take another 10-minute break or so, and then probably about 10 minutes we'll check in, right? 10-minute break, and then we'll have another truth teller. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. Please return to your seats. We're about to reconvene.
We're good. Okay, hon. You're good.
Hello. Hello. Mia, Amanda, Melody. It's an honor to be before you today and have beautiful hearts receiving my story. And that means a lot to me, especially moving through this world in a Black femme body. it means everything for you to hold my truths today. My name is Farine Paris. I use she, her pronouns. And I come from the Queen City. My family and I, we live in Burlington, Vermont. And I am so multifaceted with the identities that I'm inviting into this room today that centers and influences the way that I move through this world, the way that I think, the way that I react, the way that I feel. And so just in case folks want to project any other narratives on me, I'm here to say that I'm Farine Paris. I'm from beautiful Haitian ancestry. I am from the first Black Republic country that invited us to remember that freedom is ours to have and to kick out the colonizers, right? So it's in my DNA to speak up, to revolt, to be unapologetic. Like I can't turn it off if I wanted to, but it is the gift the ancestors have given me. I am a daughter of immigrant parents, Farah and Yolene. Farine is a combination of my parents' names. And sometimes they were like, do you have a card? I go, I think I'm the only Farine in Vermont, but we'll see. But I'm a daughter of immigrant parents. I am a first-generation student. After I say that I'm a daughter of immigrant parents, naming that I'm a first-generation student comes right after, because my parents sacrificed everything for me to have access to education, right? Like for them, it's like, without that, how will you be able to navigate what it means to exist in this country? And at times they chose to pay the tuition over the mortgage, right? And so I thank them for doubling, tripling down on what it meant to ensure that I had access. Because lived experiences are beautiful, but language and the ability to speak on behalf of yourself, right? Like I love Jason Reynolds when he's like, teach the babies how to read, because the more words we have, the more we can make sense of what's kind of happening, right? And so I'm here, and I am someone who navigates this world with a lot of anxiety, and it's deeply important for me to bring that into this space. I am someone who navigates this world with depression, and I am someone who navigates this world with thoughts that seem to bounce around. And so sometimes I don't complete my sentences, and that's okay. And been able to let go of this perfectionism that is weighted so heavily on us as Black women. This idea that we're superheroes and we don't mess up and we don't need help and we don't show emotion. I'm here to break all that, because that just is all bullshit. Because I feel deeply. I feel so deeply. Sometimes I wish I didn't feel so deeply, because it's just not my emotions on my heart. It's those that are around me. I am so in need of connection and community. I can't do this thing called life on my own. Even though sometimes it's just been drilled to like, figure it out, fake it before you make it, da-da-da. But then we break. And I don't have time to break, because when I break, I'm not able to live the life that I'm deserving of. I come here very proud of my Blackness, and I come here very in pain about my Blackness. I come here with such beautiful stories and narratives to say about my Blackness, and I come here with such pain that is a part of my life just because I'm Black. I came into this world 1981, Libra, and from the moment I came into this world, something that I had no control over, my race, my ethnicity, has been the thing that has driven so many different factors in my life. So I'm here trying my best to remember that I have a voice, trying my best to remember that what I have to say matters, my truth matters, whether someone chooses to believe that truth, whether someone believes it's my truth. I'm saying that for myself in particular in this moment, because right now the world feels very loveless. And so if it's okay with you, I'd like to start with a poem to ground my heart. Because in order to sit in these conversations and to hear my truth as a Black femme, we must invite love and listening into the space. This one is called In the Loveless World. I walk through the streets where hearts are shut tight like storefront gates, and I feel the echo of bell hooks warning. This is a loveless world. I see people mistaking power for intimacy, performing care but never embodying it. Their laughter laced with cruelty. Silences stretched so thin, they nearly slice me open. And I wonder, how did we arrive here? So quick to trade tenderness for convenience, so ready to let greed write the story of our days. Yet even as I name it, I refuse to surrender. I carry love like contraband in my chest, smuggling it into spaces that never asked for it, planting it in the cracks between concrete and grief. I know this world is starving. I know the feast we need is not built from power or possession, but from the simple and radical truth. Love is an act of will, both intention and action. And still, I rise each morning, determined to love louder, even here, especially in this loveless world. In the year of 2005, I have found my way to a dear book that's been out since 1999. I was too busy partying like it was 1999 to know that Bell Hooks had dropped this book on the scene. But she's really inviting me to think about this word love. Because when I think about some of my most deepest struggles when it comes to my race, it was the absence of love. It was the absence of either being able to be proactive so that a harm didn't happen, or taking accountability as soon as you can because you couldn't prevent said harm from happening. Not having compassion, the absence of love. And so I'm here because when I think about land and when I think about resources and when I think about ways that discrimination has found its way into my life, it was such an access of love. And I wonder it's because this country, for generations upon generations upon generations, we're on 426 years plus of this country not knowing what it means to hold a Black femme, of this country knowing us as labor providers, our bodies, our words, our memories, like we birth this country. These are hard truths to sit in, but if we can't embrace the truth, then we can't keep it real, which means that we actually can't get to work. And so I can't sit here expecting people to receive my story with such tenderness and compassion without acknowledging that this country was set up not to see me, was set up to not see me as human, that I'm still 3/5. And I feel that still, even in 2025. November 20th, 2022. It was a beautiful Sunday. The sun was beaming. It was Sunday, which means that it was football day, which means that I was getting ready to go watch Vikings football with a crew of black women at the beautiful home of Taisha Green and Lisa Gorman. It was just meant to be a beautiful day. It was Friendsgiving. We all had our assignments of what meals to bring. I was so happy. I left the house in purple satin pajamas that was gifted to me by this group for my birthday. My partner at the time and he was giving me a ride to go watch football. We walked out to our car in our driveway in Burlington, Vermont. My daughter, my littlest one, was with us. And I get in the car and I'm holding my meal that I'm so proud to bring. And I notice my partner at the time frozen in front of our car. And my gut knew why he was frozen. Is there something written on this car? What's written on this car? Whatever it is, it stopped him in his tracks. I look at him through the glass windshield, and the look in his eyes tells me that there's something written on this car. My daughter's bouncing in the back seat, so excited to go see all the black women and drop me off. Put my dish on the dashboard. I get out the car. I stand in front of the car with him. And my heart broke. Nigger. Nigger. Across my front hood. I know this word. I know this word. It's in our history. It's in our stories. I know this word. But I actually have never been called this word. It was my first. It was my first time that someone left me a message and wanted me to know that I was a nigger. I start asking myself, where was this? Did someone come into my driveway and write this on my car? Like in my neighborhood? Did I go run an errand in the community or go to a meeting and I parked my car and went inside said building and someone was like, let's put that on her car now? Till this day, I don't know who wrote it. I don't know where it was written. I just do know that that is a moment in time that really has changed me moving forward living in this state. Because it's so clear that no matter what you do, I'm a storyteller. I've worked in education for 15 years in higher ed. I've been at UVM for 8 years. I've welcomed students upon students every year to that university. I volunteer. I show up in the schools. I give away stuff for free. I open up my home. I try my best not to be confrontational. I try my best not to be non-threatened. And I'm still a nigger. You ask yourself, like, why do I try? It's just wild how this one word written on my car till this day breaks me open. I remember that all I wanted to do was go to football. I'm like Joshua, my partner at the time, he's a white cis man. There was nothing that he could do for me in that moment. I'm like, please take me to my sisters. I think that's the hard part that we don't always talk about in interracial families, that at some point, though, you don't have my lived experience. It's just not enough. Because I don't have time to explain to you what this is making me feel. I don't have time to hold your tears as well. So I'm so grateful that the ancestors had me going to football that day. I showed up, and usually the door's unlocked. Take your shoes off, put your dish down. Everybody was in the living room. I heard all the laughter. I slowly walked in, and Kathleen, my dear friend, was the person who came out to the kitchen. And at first she's like, hey. And I think all I could do was look at her, and she could tell right away something wasn't well. I would share with her that my car was tagged with the N-word. She would hold me. She would walk me into the living room where I would see a bunch of the other black women who have been my circles on Sunday. And she would invite them to slow down because something had happened to one of us. And when something happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. That's how we are as black women. And a Friendsgiving that should have just been filled with nourishment and laughter and beautiful debacleness was inserted with stories of when others have been called the N-word. The group was actually shocked that this was my first time. For many of them, that word was so part of their lived experiences. Here we are in Burlington, Vermont, 10-ish black women sharing stories of what it's felt like to be called the N-word. But I do remember being plopped on that couch, and I do remember everyone piling over me with arms, and you held me. And I'm so deeply grateful, because that group, for that reason and for so many other reasons, is why I'm able to be before you, here, existing, breathing. November 4th, 2017. St. Michael's College and the University of Vermont were teed off to have their annual exhibition game hosted at the University of Vermont. This is what happens between these two local schools. At the end of the day, D1, D2, but it's a beautiful way to bring folks together and celebrate local sports. My partner at the time was the St. Mike's basketball coach. He was a really amazing coach. Josh, you were a great coach, because his players weren't just players, they were people. They were humans, people that these families were trusting you to hold them for the next 4 years. And for Josh and for his coaches, those players weren't just basketball players. They actually, even though it was St. Mike's, the majority of their players were men of color. A lot of their players were black men. So these white coaches couldn't do justice by their players simply boxing them into being basketball players. They really tried to open it up for them to talk about all the different things. And this St. Mike's team at the time felt it was important for them to take a knee at the upcoming exhibition game with UVM, because they were the men's team, they always played second after the women's team. So this was really one of their very few moments to be a part of the anthem being played and to take a position as a collective group. And I remember the conversations with my partner at the time and what would this mean for us to do this, because we knew it wasn't going to be received well. We knew that it wasn't just going to be able to be like, okay, because we were taking up space on something that was black. We were taking up space on an issue that we want to be in denial about, that police brutality and the impact that it has had on black bodies is at insane rates that don't align with the percentage that we take up in communities. I remember this day like it was yesterday, and I'm naming it today because it's actually a day that I think most of us in Vermont don't know, or we've simply forgotten. But I know, because at the end of the day, when I reflect on how am I here, now divorced from this relationship with this white person, there was so much impact of race and activism that took a toll on our souls. November 4th, 2017, the gym was packed. It's the exhibition game. It was packed. It felt like everybody was there. I was sitting behind the St. Mike's bench with my daughters at the time. They were very little. And the moment came. The moment that I had anxiety about all week. I knew we had to do this, but it doesn't mean that I wasn't with fear about what would be the consequences for doing something like this, or what would be the response. When it came time for both teams to go onto the floor, St. Mike's College is on the left side of the basketball court. UVM basketball players are on the right. These teams are facing each other. The anthem comes on and the St. Mike's team takes a knee. Not all of them take a knee, because as a group, they said, whoever wants to do it will do it, but we will lock arms. Many of the black players took a knee. All the white coaches took a knee. And the stadium room went insane. Go back to your country. Get up. How dare you? This isn't ridiculous. This is basketball. Why is this here? I'm sitting in the stands surrounded by people that are in my community, that I work with. I was working at UVM at the time. The anthem was only a few minutes, but it felt like forever. As I sat with tears streaming down my face, quietly as possible, seeing how this campus that I show up to every day and give myself to all the time, sometimes even picking work over family, all the labor, not hold space for this moment, not hold space for a group of student athletes asking us to hold space for suffering that comes with their lived experiences. That was it. Not you need to do better, not that you're wrong, just simply. And to see them be referred to as animals, called monkeys. I mean, go back to your country. These student athletes were born right here on this US land. It was wild. My girls are oblivious. They have no idea what's going on. And so now my mama heart is trying to do everything for them not to see that I am breaking down. The anthem comes to an end, and the announcer gets on that microphone, and in my heart, I'm like, is somebody going to say something? The president of the college is there. The vice provost is there. But this is what happens when it comes to like racism, discrimination, things that happen, anti-blackness. People kept it moving like nothing had happened. All right, guys, let's start the game. All right, let's go. It was like as if we did not have this racial moment just happen in this gym. So now I'm not just sad, I'm pissed. I'm angry. And yes, y'all have made me move into the angry black woman because I cannot believe nobody is going to say something about what just happened. This white man starts to approach the St. Mike's College bench. This white man, and he starts yelling at them and condoning them for what they did. There's security, but security doesn't seem to want to intervene with this white man going to talk to the St. Mike's team. So what do I have to do? Because it's always black women coming to save everybody. I get up and physically use my body to be between this white man and this team. Because again, this team they're children of families that we promised we got them. They're not my blood sons, but they are my Vermont sons. And that's the coaching team. And I put my black body and I eat all the darkness from this ignorant, entitled white man that thought he could come over and tell this team who they should be in this gym. And of course, I express myself. And what happens next? I'm being asked by athletic staff to cool the fuck down. I'm being told, Farine, you need to sit down or else we're going to have to ask you to leave. What? White man walks away, walks into the abyss. But what does everybody just remember? The angry black woman. I didn't even want to go here. I just wanted to come to the game, watch it like everyone else. But again, nobody has your back. Your issue doesn't matter. Let's just get on with the game. Capitalism, greed, let's just keep it going. And now I'm being told that I will get kicked out if I can't keep my calm. Yo, Malcolm, his quote rings in my heart about black women being the most disrespected, unsupported, like disregarded individuals in the United States. I took a moment and asked my girls to just sit tight, and I took a moment to walk out the gym so that I could breathe. I walked by the college president and the provost, and they're just laughing, and and it's just like, am I the only one who thinks what just happened shouldn't have happened? Monday comes around, nobody's announcing it. Athletics had a whole staff meeting that morning. Nobody named it. So again, it's this theme about the labor that is on people of color, black folks, especially black women, to be like, hello. So I'm the one going around like, did people hear about this? What's going on? And when I should actually be, I'm the one who should be held. Me and my family is the ones that should be held, because what else is happening is people are now targeting us. People want Josh fired. People are like wanting to pull money from St. Mike's because these players did this. I name this because this is part of our history here. This is Black history here in Vermont, where over 3,000 spectators would rather align themselves as oppressors than center the individuals that were being oppressed. performative apology emails would come, performative meetings wanting to follow up would come. But it doesn't matter because this energy still exists till today. August 14th, 2023. Again, it's on Black women. The legacy and character of former REIB Director Taisha Green is being violated and harmed by the city of Burlington. Her character is being set up. The press is being deeply irresponsible. And it was on us to come together in City Hall, take over City Council, and demand justice for her. Justice for Black women, justice for Black issues, justice for the Kemp Center, justice for the fact that till this day, even though you declared racism as a public health emergency in 2020, we are still getting harmed, we are still experiencing all these things. And we still fight for Taisha's freedom. We still fight for the city of Burlington to do reparations and to repair the harm. Because I am so sick and tired of greed and ego and capitalism and white supremacy ruining the lives of innocent Black women. It happens all the time here. There's Taisha Greens, but there's many Taisha Greens. There's Kaya Morrises. There's so many of us that our pure existence and our integrity to not bow down to whiteness, and we get punished, and the consequences happen. And there is such loss of land and resources. And I think the last date that I just want to bring into the room is November 25th, 2023. And on that day, I would officially physically separate with my partner, who I have shared as white, and enter one of the most violent divorce processes that you couldn't have told me was gonna flip my world upside down. The way racism and anti-Blackness plays into how legality happens here in Vermont. As someone who is a survivor, I felt so raped by the process. The process that wouldn't acknowledge that I had just had surgery, that I was not well, I had a hysterectomy, a process that would not stop, a process that ignored doctors' letters that said Farine is not okay, Farine should not be working, Farine is experiencing trauma, a legal system that once it starts by the opposite person, I have no choice but to make myself be in the undertow of it. The financial withdrawal that it took from my heart, the fact that I don't even get to choose how I'm labeled in the system. If you Google my name is under defendant. And what does that feel like, being in the body that I am? Not even being able to get a lawyer that looks like me. Being on these virtual calls where my lawyer is white, his lawyer is white, he's white, the judge is white. How do I expect them to see me as a Black single mom? There's not enough time in the world for me to bring enough stories for y'all to see my humanity. And it's come at such a cost. It's put my house on the line. Housing insecurity, financial insecurity. Just because I no longer wanted to do something as a woman, I shouldn't have been whiplashed by the system in that way. It's quite the experience living in the Queen City, when all it does is try to tell you that you are not the queen. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Vereen. Thank you for your courage. I want to ask you about a world where none of this, or if any of this happened, could be different. A world that's different that you would envision. So that we can take your pain and help move forward with the world that you envision.
I'm reflecting on your question, and just all that keeps coming back to me is love. Love, 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 love. I know what it's like to feel loved as a Black woman. Ooh, I'm only 5'2", but when I feel loved like a Black woman, I feel like I'm 6'4". I can take on anything. In Bell Hooks' book, she talks about we're so caught up in the idea of love in this romantic way, and it needs to be stripped down. This idea of love between neighbors, love between colleagues, like love between community members. And in my work that I do now as a storyteller, it's not just love, but it's also truth. And I think those two need to be in such a relationship. And we're not being honest at all about the reality of what is here sometimes. I mean, yes, there's us that do this work and we bring these stories forward, but at the end of the day, we are living in a very gaslit optic illusion of what this state is. It's not as liberal as we think. It's not as progressive as we think. Some of us are not just even being honest that, like, Vermont was set up to be white. There's a reason why Vermont feels so white, because people want it to be white, and they try very hard to keep it white without being like, I'm trying to keep this white. And so for me, I'm like, we actually need to really center some really deep, truthful conversations. Because I think if you could slow yourself down to hear my story, I think if we had a true human moment where you heard my story, or I heard your story, not just heard it, but witness you, I really feel that we can find a place to figure out how to exist in this world. That's why I believe in the power of stories. I believe in this work, this idea of truth. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I'm part of this small group that is living beyond this world. And that's how I keep my sanity, because I can't get caught up in this illusion. I want to stay in the bold truth, in the reality. And I also need to show up with such profound love of self. I think a lot of us are hurting. We hate ourselves. There are times where I'd look in the mirror and I'm like, I hate you, Farine. Like, I hate you. And when you have that hurt in your body, you do hurt. So a lot of us are walking around with hurt, and we're hurting. We're not giving space for people to strip down the mask and put the capes down and just be real. It's not easy sometimes for me to hear that I've harmed somebody. But if I'm really witnessing their story, I'm actually able to be accountable, hold that, and do better. Just like love is a choice, being anti-racist is a choice, right? It has to be done with will and intention, or else we're going to keep suffering. And as someone who goes into the Burlington schools as an artist residency or in other districts, I hear stories from our students, and it's like the same thing that I was saying 40 years ago, 30 years ago. Why are the brown and black babies saying the same stories that I was saying in Brockton, Massachusetts, right here in Burlington, Vermont, Winooski, Vermont? We're not being honest and real about what's at stake here.
In your truth, there is a lot of systems at play, right? The universities, the court systems.
Yeah.
What recommendations do you have for those systems?
Race needs to be factored. Like, it's non-negotiable. It literally impacts everything. What I wish my divorce process would have looked like is, wow, we have a black woman separating from a white man. Let's think of the context of what is actually going to be lost, because we want to get caught up in things like houses and the value of the car and what's in the accounts. Nobody factored how much privilege I lost with this divorce and separation. I know that I was moving through the world protected by a cape that came with being partnered with a white man. And so when people are telling me that, well, you know, you'll just sell your house and pick somewhere else to live. I'm sorry, did you not hear my car's been tagged? I'm an activist, people like come after. I can't just live anywhere. I feel safe in my neighborhood. I wish a court system would listen to me on that. He chose to leave. He chose to move out the state. Why do I have to get forced out my home? The home that I've known the longest, my girls have known the longest. Folks don't want to kind of take in those things. And when I have even a lawyer telling me, it's going to be really hard to make a judge understand that you have a fear about moving out of your neighborhood. That, you know, it's a white judge in Vermont. And I think that's bullshit. Because all my life I've had to hold space for whiteness and everybody else. I don't know how this is, you can't use your skills, code language this, and make him understand that I have extreme fears about living anywhere else but where I am. There are facts and there are truths. And we like to just use the facts, but we don't talk about the truths that come with those facts. Like, I can't afford this divorce process right now. I would like to tag out. I would like to take a break. The bills still come. As long as the opposite side has all the money they have, you go into debt. They just keep hitting up your credit card. You can't, that's not fair. I'm literally doing my best with my mental health, trying to honor my daughters. It took so much to keep advocating. like asking the legal office, why do you need an automatic retainer of another $5,000? I haven't even racked up that bill yet. Can we find something in the middle? And if I didn't ask these things, they wouldn't happen. And I think just echoing some of the narratives we've heard today, it's just, we just wish this shit would be done for us. And it's always us. I'm holding me, I'm holding my daughters, I'm even holding the ex-husband in some ways, right? In order to stay in my home for an additional year, please move money from your retirement into his to hold him over. He has the fixed income. I'm a contracted worker. He has paid leave for medical. I do not. But none of those go into the collective picture. And that's why me as a storyteller, I get so frustrated, because we're not telling the full story. We're telling the one that you're comfortable with, the one that you want to sit in. At the end of the day, nobody is acknowledging that it is by the grace of God that I am alive and breathing before you, knowing that I was walked out on 12 days post-surgery. And I've been in single mama mode since. And I can't give up because I have my girls. And sometimes I feel us in this struggle. We're like, we can't give up. We have to just keep doing. But I shouldn't have to. I'm not a cat. I don't know how many more lives I have left. Because even just these dates, November 4th, November 20th, August 14th. There's so many more. I can pick myself up, but each time there are parts of me that I wasn't able to pick back up. And I just want to move through this world as whole as possible, as soft as possible. Because I love hard, and I give so much. And in this process, when I needed to be seen, every system, it just saw right through me. Sometimes as a person of color, you feel very hyper visible or you feel very invisible. And I just don't know how I got stuck with the negotiated thing that we ended on. But I was tired. And I didn't have any more will to fight or money. So I had to settle. And it's going to come at a cost.
Thank you, Vereen. We can leave it at that. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much for your courage and your sharing. That was very, very impactful. Thank you guys for your understanding and sitting and holding space during this time. We are going to take another 10-minute break to collect our thoughts. Feel free, please, to visit the art table, the care room, if you need any refreshments or anything like that. Also, I want to point out that the Land Access Opportunity Board is here, and they've set up an interactive display. So if you get some time during this break or during lunch, please visit them. Yeah, thank you. UVM, class of 1996. And I attended St. Mike's for my master's degree in business. So it's real. See you guys back here in 10 minutes. For reconvening. Also, another quick announcement. The Racial Justice Alliance is here as well today. They're tabling out in the foyer, so please be sure to visit them. And they have T-shirts, I heard. I need a double XL, Mr. Hughes. Double XL, I'm working on it. And now I'm going to hand it over to the commissioners for our next truth teller.
Thank you. Before we begin this next truth-telling segment, I want to share that we're about to hear has been pre-recorded. This was done to make sure that our truth teller, who will be sharing deeply about her experience of living with a disability, could participate in a way that is most accessible and comfortable for her. Accessibility is a vital part of creating inclusive spaces, and we're grateful she chose to share her truth with us in this format. Please listen with open hearts, and as she speaks about her journey, the realities she faces, and the wisdom she brings. And I hope that you are. She's also seeing us live stream, so she will be seeing our participation. So please take a moment to really be here present with her.
My name is Eileen, and I'm a licensed teacher. I've taught children here in Vermont, some of Vermont's most under-resourced and vulnerable children and families for close to 30 years, including 17 years with Head Start in 2 different communities. I'm here to share my own lived experience in the spirit of truth and accountability, and also on behalf of the children and teachers that are still in schools. I'm not going to name individuals, but I may name agencies. My story, it's not about hurting people by calling them out, but I grew up in struggle, and I've seen people in struggle. It's valuable to speak out. Basically, systems treat vulnerable people poorly. It's hard to survive on the systems. So anyhow, everything I share is true, and it comes just from my personal experience, not out of malice. It's just to move things forward and to see if I can help somebody else. So I want to start a little bit about, to a certain degree, sometimes I feel people might peg me as coming from privilege, and I have had a lot of privileges in my life. But I will say childhood wasn't one of them. I was born into generational poverty. My father is French Canadian, and my mother is Panamanian. Both families were incredibly poor. I was removed from my mother's care when I was 6 years old. But in that time period, that young, some of my first memories were being hungry, not having shoes. It's not that I minded you. I noticed, truthfully, when my grandmother picked us up to take us across country and we were removed, that we didn't have underwear or shoes. We were hungry, we were skinny. My sister used to steal. She was 6 years old just to feed us. So, the other part of my, background is my French Canadian family. I grew up in Maine once I left my mother's care. And that was also, a struggle the whole time. I grew up in the child care food program. Thank you very much. Keep sending that food, because we often didn't have a place and a home. I don't have a childhood bedroom that I remember. So anyhow, I was also removed from my father's care at age 13. And at that period in life, I spent the next, period until I graduated high school in a series of foster homes. And I do want to shout out and say thank you to those people who will probably never see this, but foster care is an important role. So I managed to survive childhood. It was not easy, I'll tell you that. And I went to college with help with the application process. There is the access issue all the time that I come up, I'm intelligent, but the amount of forms you have to fill to figure out how to go to college when you don't have parents supporting you, it's ridiculous. So anyhow, I managed to go as an independent student, meaning I had no financial support from my family. And I graduated from college with a BA in history of all things. I had a child young and was a single parent raising him. And truthfully, when I had my son at 22, I was pressured to go back, to go to work because, the idea was that I was going to make something of myself and maybe be a little bit more like the foster care family, the last one, like middle class and successful. But instead, I went on this really important support system for children and families that is called welfare, but it's actually, reach up or whatever you want to call it now, because I wanted to spend time with my son. So at that point in life, I realized that basically I wanted to become a teacher. And so as I was raising my son in those years, and I will shout out to his dad, who is a wonderful friend and an excellent father. But he was 19 when my son was born, and we barely knew each other. So we've raised him on a similar track, but as friends. So I became a teacher because I felt so strongly I didn't want any other children to have to go through what I did. You can imagine, sorry. I've met a lot of families over the years, a lot of kids. I'm looking at, have a photo here now. People have no idea. There's so much judgment in the world. You just don't know what it's like until you don't know where your kids are going to sleep, or heaven forbid you have a mental health problem or a substance use issue, but you're still doing your best. So all I want to say is, I met a lot of really wonderful kids and families, and I wanted to make a difference. I had this idea, like, what would have happened in my childhood if somebody would have reached a hand out to me early enough, or to my family? So I did get into Head Start. I worked for Head Start for 17 years in 2 different places, with years in between teaching at a variety of different child care centers, and also doing in-home care for people. I've raised many a baby, and that brings me great joy and comfort to think of. I earned my Vermont teaching license at the age of 45, actually, after all those years teaching, and most of that time I did not have a car. So while I was sort of creeping my way up, I was 45 in the Brattleboro area making $16 an hour. And walking to work, and that's fine. I was in great shape. But again, it's a struggle, There were times where my heat turned off, and like I opened the oven door, and like, you don't want your kid to know the struggle. But I did earn my teaching license because along those years, I took about 15 classes in early childhood education, and I got my license. And in that period of time, I worked multiple jobs. I actually trained and mentored other teachers. I did professional development on a lot of social emotional topics, and infant toddler care and supervision and that kind of thing. I did a lot of home visiting, which is vital. I hope early educators out there will continue to do that, to go in with a really open heart to people's homes and be respectful, and imagine what you'll learn and the difference you can make when you work together. So anyhow, you can tell that my career was heartfelt, and I was on a mission. I will also point out that I was compelled through urgency of survival throughout life to work my ass off. That's how you survive when you're in whatever crisis you're in. It's never easy. When people see me in a wheelchair, being disabled is exhausting, and I barely move. Anyhow, that's a whole different topic. So anyhow, let's fast forward a few years. I moved up to the Burlington area after I got my teaching license, and when the COVID pandemic began, I was working for Head Start, Champlain Valley Head Start. I absolutely loved that job. I met a lot of great, again, children and families, learned about the community here, worked in the Old North End with a lot of new American families, and it was a hard experience, but a great experience. But right as COVID began, I switched. I was working as kind of a hybrid home visitor parent support person, and also teaching infants and toddlers part-time and roaming into different classrooms. And I purposely chose to join a brand new classroom that needed a teacher so they could run and reopen in summer of 2020. And, of course I'm going to step up. And also it was toddlers, which I've done equal time with infants and toddlers as I have preschoolers. I don't have a favorite, but there's something delightful about little ones. And so I stepped into a toddler classroom, myself and 2 other teachers, during extremely uncertain times. Our small classroom, we had 6 toddlers in it with 5 different home languages. And the startup was incredibly stressful. At that point, we were all fully masked and there were no vaccines available for quite a while. And I'll say it wasn't so much that I wasn't afraid of COVID per se. I'm just generally a fitness health enthusiast, so I'm likely to avoid anything that seems unhealthy. But I definitely had a little bit of the attitude like, I'm healthy and I'm on my rowing machine and all that bullshit. That ship has now sailed. But anyhow, I wasn't particularly afraid then. I mean, I was cautious because, truthfully, there were children who had a family member that lived with them with a very serious health condition. And I had coworkers that had very serious health conditions that were complications that we had been told, if you get COVID, that these people may die. And there was no way in hell I was going to get COVID and pass it on. So, I wore that mask. I sat out either in my car, winter included, outside to eat, or sometimes in the closet when we didn't have coverage because we were so short staffed. But, I followed all those rules. The parents had to hand their toddlers, age 1 to 3, first of all, again, 5 different home languages. The children didn't know what we were saying. They couldn't see our smiles. I worried about that. In newsflash, they didn't mind that. Once they learned to trust us, they learned through our twinkly eyes and our joyful smiles and our behavior. They loved us. There was no problem with that. But in the beginning, it was scary. The parent had to hand their child over a gate, a fence, a chain link fence out, and we would one by one take the temperature. Have you been around anybody with any symptoms of anything? Have you been out of state in the last 2 weeks? And, again, these are people that don't understand English. We had interpreters in the beginning, but it was challenging. And then not to mention just how the children felt. When you were prying them away from their mom and dad like that, it was hard. So anyhow, we did it, and I want to say we did turn this kind of start around because, again, you can convey having a big heart and loving what you do and being a supportive community member with the mask on or with one off. And these days, please put your mask on. That is supportive to me as a immunocompromised disabled woman. So thank you to those of you that do that. But I will say the children were delightful. We built a community garden. Like we joined we were in I won't say what site I was at, but a community garden space. And we took those toddlers in there and we learned about plants. We went sledding. We had a heck of a lot of crying, lots of crying, teeny tiny room. In the beginning, they were stressed out, but it was joyful. And I could go on a lot about that and I'll move on from there. I will say a year later, I was promoted to supervisor. And I began supervising the site that I had been working at for the past year, as well as another site that I'd worked at for the previous 3 or 4 years. And supervising, I mean loosely. One site, it's oversight of the well-being of the early Head Start and Head Start children in those classrooms. So I had to make sure their health records were up to date and that we knew if somebody had an allergy that everybody knew what to do and there was a health protocol and, do they know their safety drills and also what kind of supports are the families getting. So my job was curriculum and oversight, visiting classrooms, having meetings with teachers, direct supervision of a number of teachers. And it was incredibly stressful. I left the teaching job, I'll tell you. I thought it was going to be easier. I thought, oh God, that was a hard year. And I'm getting old and I'm going to help the teachers by being a supervisor. And I think now I got to say it was worse, because the teachers we didn't have enough staff. And COVID was still going on. Of course, people are sick. And in those days, you get sick. I will say in the very beginning, we had 2 weeks off if you got sick. And that was extra sick time. And I want to say, where is that policy? Because bring that shit back. I'm sorry for swearing, but it's important. I'm a grandmother. And if people are out sick, you need to be out sick. You don't want to be spreading this in schools. It's dangerous. So anyhow, but because of that, the show had to go on, the classrooms had to run. And so I basically started doing 2 jobs and the management knew it. It was just what it was. It's not safe in the classrooms if you don't have a certain number of children. There's no way I'm going to be overseeing a classroom where the teachers are like, we're scared. The kids are going to run away. They're hurting us. They're hurting each other. There's no way I'm not going to step in under that circumstance and come into the classroom. But I will say, I certainly begged for relief. I begged for, can we close these classrooms down? Can we get some extra help for some of these kids, that have some challenges, no fault of their own. They need extra help. They have rights as well to a beautiful education where they feel they can express themselves and learn and be adapted to. So I basically spent the next year and a half doing two jobs. My main job was supervisor, and the part-time job was like anything else that would need to go wrong when your classroom, somebody called out, everybody called out. Once I had to call every single family member in the morning of the whole site. Oh, no teachers today. So it was hard work. So at some point in 2022, in the late summer, early fall, I had my first COVID infection. And I want to say that every exposure I've had to COVID was through somebody that did not know they had it. So I'm going to say blameless. And even if, you know what I mean, even if you knew you had it, in those days, people's public health is to blame because it hasn't been clear. But this person didn't know, the next day, by the time, oh, by the way, we tested positive, I didn't have enough information to know, I should have isolated at that point. So it went through our household. I will tell you, it's a fact that you can have COVID and be asymptomatic because there were 3 of us in the household. 2 of us were clearly positive, and we all had varying symptoms. My boyfriend literally took a nap one day, tested positive, but took a nap and then went back out about business. Meanwhile, I felt miserable, but it was like a bad flu. But already my head was hurting, my throat was hurting, I'm coughing, I'm tight, I'm miserable, and I'm really emotional. And my heart's, it's just everything was bad. But third person in our household, you'd never know he had anything, but he did test positive. So I just want to say, the tests are you do need to test for COVID to know you're not spreading it. You can spread it asymptomatically. So anyhow, that was my COVID infection, and I actually recovered. Within a couple of weeks, I was back. I actually went out on a little vacations, doing my usual thing. I was super active then. I was in a rowing machine contest and just consistently cranking out or whatever they call it. Is it meters? But I was noticing my heart rate was really high during a typical workout, like a month or 2 after COVID. And, I would reach out to my doctor, and this is when we're going to get into systems a little bit more, because I will get back on track. Reaching out to my doctor who I'd had for 6 years, hey, my heart rate is high. And literally throughout the months, I kept on going to initially my primary doctor. And then when he basically told me that you need to throw away your fitness trackers because they were sending me alerts that there was a major problem with my biometrics. And he sent me an article on fitness tracker and anxiety disorders as his response to my illness, and refused to refer me to the UVM long COVID clinic or the COVID recovery clinic. And I begged him, and eventually, it's actually very hard to get a new doctor, by the way. So here's another problem. What do you do? So I'm sick as hell. I started at 98 pounds and I'm like burning myself out. We started in the classrooms in the fall of 2022 with, in my journal, I remember writing, we only have 3 of 7 teachers for my site that have shown up to work at the start of school. How the hell am I going to run a site with 3 of 7 teachers? It was incredibly stressful, and you can guess what happened, right? I was told the classroom had to stay open. You'll figure it out. Well, and so I did what teachers do all the time. You do way more than you should. And I wasn't a teacher anymore. I was a supervisor. But so I worked sick for 6 months while I was desperately trying to get the medical professionals to believe me. Yes, I know I am crying when I come in, but I really am sick. All these, actually took a while to get into the long COVID clinic at the UVM. Apparently they won't let you self-refer. So what happens if you are a person that, I don't know, doesn't have a doctor that believes you, like just about everybody with long COVID? You're not going to get into the COVID recovery clinic. I hope that's changed, by the way. I eventually was savvy enough to ask my gynecologist, who was still on my team, I couldn't find a regular doctor, to refer me, and I got into the COVID recovery clinic. So push came to shove as I was asking for relief from teaching, more help for the teachers, having lots of challenges at work. I dropped to 87 pounds. I was having chest pain all the time. I was crashing. There's something called post-exertional symptom exacerbation, and it means after an exertion. Could it be physical, like maybe you're doing a dance party with the kids? It could be mental, maybe you're studying or doing something like that, or emotional. Then the next day, 24 hours later, your whole body aches and you feel like you've got a flu. So I was quite sick. I went on protected leave at that point and went to the COVID recovery clinic. I was diagnosed in January of 2023 with long COVID. And I'm going to tell you the diagnostic code is U09.9 because knowledge is power. You got to advocate for that and read what's on your chart because you could get anxiety ridden if you're not careful. So I persisted and did find actually 2 doctors and it was actually 3 at this point, but verified that I had long COVID and there was a lot of tests to rule out that it couldn't be something else. But I went on leave and I will tell you, I thought I got better. And that's something that happens with a lot of us with long COVID. I had been through physical therapy at this clinic and I rested a lot, just kind of chilled out. And I was just kind of, truthfully, at first I thought I was having this, well, I was sick as all hell in the beginning, but I thought, how wonderful, I'm on leave. They're still paying me. I have a disability policy. I'm going to go back to work after a nice rest. That's what I was thinking. Of course, I was also scared and miserable and sick, but I did start to get better. My physical therapist at the clinic said that she thought my only trigger for this condition, post-exertional symptom exacerbation, was stress. And if I avoided stress by exercising and going back to work, and just kind of get going, then I would be all set. And I started, we kind of had a protocol in place for me to get back into work. And I began bumping up my activity, starting to exercise a little bit more. I was walking 11,000 steps a day at that point. I took a college class and I was like, okay, I'm ready, but I'm smart. And I'm like, this is a pretty serious illness. And we all agreed, my doctors and my physical therapist, that a gradual re-entry to work with some accommodations in place was necessary. So I wrote a formal accommodation letter with the help of my doctors. And I won't go through a whole bunch of what happened with that, but I will say it was difficult to the whole process of requesting accommodations was incredibly difficult. There's nobody to help you. When you get sick all of a sudden, if this happens to you, anybody watching, you don't think it's going to happen to you. Heaven forbid you get in a car accident, something happens. Nobody's going to explain it to you. There's nobody that's going to tell you what to do. You're just going to be hurt and sick and like treading water, trying to figure out, how do I get back to work? Am I sick? What do I do? Who's going to help me? And so anyhow, it was a difficult process, but I persevered and push came to shove. I was fired. I didn't get my accommodations. The sticking point after a very difficult process was I wanted to use my own earned sick leave in order to return to work gradually. So I could start at 20 hours, 25, 30, 40, and so on and so forth. No, apparently that was a no. I didn't actually know I was fired. I thought my job would be secure because I actually had it in writing that we had a 6-month leave. So, I was very disappointed because, to be honest, I really did want to go back to work. I loved that job. I mean, I never got to say goodbye to the kids, the teachers, anybody. But anyhow, I got out of that accommodation process and without knowing that it wasn't safe for me to return without that full accommodation request, went back on leave and got an email 2 weeks later that said, oh, we assume you've resigned because you didn't show back up at work on blah, blah, blah day. Here's a link if you'd like to reapply. And by the way, your health insurance ends in less than 2 weeks on June 1st. I tell you, I told you enough about my childhood to know, it's not a surprise to you I'm diagnosed with CPTSD from childhood. I got over some of that in my 30s and 40s as I just tried to make a better life for myself. But it was terrifying. I was traumatized, from the process of, I actually thought they loved me. I thought they wanted me to come back. I thought I was one of their best people, so that was one thing, big shocker. And you know what? There's millions of us going through this. So you too would be shocked at what happens when systems just have a policy of pushing people out if it's too tricky to keep you. But so I was scared. I got very sick. I was about 92 pounds when I was trying to get back into work, and I was walking that 11,000 steps a day. I dropped down to 85 pounds with no health insurance. I thought I was having a heart attack. I literally was. I remember one day I was crying. Somebody took me to the emergency room, and I remember like saying goodbye to my son in my mind, like, God, I'm having a heart attack. And I had no health insurance. I will say one system that did work, and I hope this continues to work, is actually two, because I want to call out the systems that work. Thank you, Retain. Retain is a Department of Labor program that has a grant here in Vermont, and I hope that grant's still going because they saved my life. They helped me figure out how I was going to survive when that accommodation process didn't work out. I got emergency Medicaid, but I went without insurance for 3 weeks of just panic, I didn't dare to go to the doctors because I was sick. I was like, it affects your brain too. It's the whole thing is just a mess. I did have a lawyer at that point, a pro bono lawyer who tried to help me keep some sort of job. It just didn't work. And I went ahead, and I remember the day I went to pick up my belongings from my office, had been all taken out of my office and piled in the group hallway. I was 85 pounds when I went to pick up my belongings. Like, there was no goodbye, nothing. I mean, I will say I had a few people that were there that I gave them a hug, the few that I felt comfortable with, but it was like the walk of shame. And I'll tell you, I did not deserve that at all. And you know what? A lot of other educators, I know many of them, they didn't deserve it either. Something's got to change about that. We gave it our all during that time. So I want to move on from this piece and then to get into the systems and where I'm at now. I lost my income. At that point, I thought I'd made it. As you can tell, I've lived my whole life. I don't even want to say paycheck to paycheck. Like beg, steal, or borrow. I don't steal, but you know what I mean? Like always in debt, you can't quite end. Like finally, like, hey, I'm a supervisor for Head Start. I'm making it. But you lose your income. Lost my health insurance. I lost, truthfully, a lot of friends. People don't believe in long COVID. A lot of family members that literally, somebody even told me that, I deserve it because I'm liberal. I did fight back though. I filed complaints right away. I filed complaints with the Office of Head Start. I filed complaints with the Attorney General. I filed complaints with the USDA, anybody I could, because I know my rights, and you're protected. If you're getting federal funds, you need to be following the Americans with Disabilities Act, and having reasonable accommodation process. And I didn't believe that happened to me. So I filed all of these reports and really just kind of sat there feeling sick and getting worse, truthfully, my complaint to the Attorney General in Vermont, civil rights complaint, an ADA violation, and retaliatory firing is, what the complaint was about, was made, I think, in the summer of 2023. It was confusing. It's another, like, who would know to do that? And that's another point I want to say. If you're not as used to survival and happen to have a college education and spend your whole life helping people survive on the system, you're not going to figure out to do that. I don't have enough money. Like, despite, I actually live in a nice house. It's not my house and I can't eat it. It's not safe either. I got to go. But I don't have enough money for that, So anyhow, I filed my complaint, and, I would say I heard back in December or January. No, it was January the following year. Turns out the Attorney General did want to talk to me about it. Now, I won't go into the details of all that. It is a pending investigation right now. But one thing I will say is that having very little resources, I am on SSDI right now, and I managed to cling to my disability policy despite the fact that they tried to say I resigned, which would have meant I might not have been able to get my benefit, right? If you resign from a job, I don't know, but so I have that income, but not enough to get a lawyer. Like, really, what am I going to do? I didn't want mediation. I was just like, I'm too sick. I was basically like, I'm filing these complaints and I'm fighting for my life, which is what I've been doing for the past 3 years. I've been so sick. I still think I'm dying. I hope not. I got a granddaughter. I haven't even babysat her yet. She's 3. So I file these complaints, and I'll tell you, it's confusing. I reached out to Vermont Legal Aid, Disability Rights Vermont, obviously the Attorney General. There is some support and validation, but a lot of it's lip service so far. It's confusing. And I'm smart. I don't mean I'm a genius. I'm not that smart. I'm also brain injured, but again, these processes, and I will also point out, while having to apply for SSDI, which is incredibly difficult. I don't want anybody to ever say again that somebody on disability, that they got that easily. That's bullshit. It is not easy to get disability. So anyhow, I'm going to rule that right out. It's a lot of forms. It's a lot of proving. And if you don't have medical insurance to get all these fancy referrals and you don't have a doctor that believes you, good luck getting disability. So anyhow, that was tough as well.
Can I ask what
Yeah, I'm
is
sorry.
Sorry, what is
Yeah.
SSDI for people that don't know?
Oh, yes, thank you. Very important, and I know I speak quickly. I hate using acronyms, and I do that because they don't make sense. SSDI is the supplemental, Social Security Disability Income. But what that means in real language is, some of us are disabled at different times of life. If you are disabled at a point before you earn income, then you will get SSI. If you are disabled at a point that you have earned enough income that you meet a financial, like I've made enough money that they've decided they're going to give me a little bit of the money I've put in all these years into my disability check. So it's a really important thing. The other thing I was able to access was long-term disability. I'm still getting long-term disability from my workplace policy. And there's another thing. Wow, that is another really difficult system. So as you can imagine, all of this made me worse. Getting fired made me worse. When I should have been resting, I was fighting for my life in multitude ways, but I'm a fighter and I just don't give up. So I kept going. I don't know. I will say with this whole legal process, and I'll leave it at that, I ended up not receiving, I went through mediation. I didn't receive the formal rebuttal, or at least I have no evidence of receiving it. I can't find it. I thought my case was being investigated a year ago, and I just found out about a month ago that no, they were waiting for me to write a formal rebuttal to something I'd never seen, and I don't have a lawyer. So I had 1 week to come up with an abridged kind of answer, and I just sent that off, and I'm just going to call out because I know what happened to me wasn't ethical, and what I want to know right now is it legal? I'm hoping that will be investigated, and we'll find out shortly. So. The current state I'm in now is I'm living on disability income. I'm in a lot of pain most of the time. I'm pretty much what you call bedbound in the long COVID community. I actually love this wheelchair. And I want to be clear too about something. These kind of mobility aids or accessibility tools are vital. This is another thing that was incredibly hard to access through the system because I look healthy. I actually can still walk. I can walk from room to room and it hurts. But when I do it, I sort of look normal, and give me a few years, see what happens, this kind of pain. So anyhow, but what I want to say why I'm tearing up about this wheelchair is not about the wheelchair. I love this wheelchair. I had to go fund me for this wheelchair. I worked hard for this wheelchair and for a used scooter as well. So no shame in that. If you have to do that, go ahead and do that as well. Maybe I can donate some point, but But what's worse than being in a wheelchair, wildly worse, I don't mind this at all, is being in bed all the time in pain. It's a horrible illness. I'm not in bed watching TV. You know, I'm in bed like trying to see if I can get my heart to stop hurting if I close my eyes and put a feet on the wall. Or maybe, you know, whatever, you know, like all this whole time, I see my granddaughter maybe twice a month, and she lives close. And the reason is I'm not well enough to sit up. It literally, like, this is hard for my body. So I'm sick. I fight with the doctors all the time. They don't believe in long COVID. I had a physical therapist come do a home health evaluation just last week, and she told me, oh, it's just your nervous system there's something wrong with, and we can't help you. I can't feed myself anymore. I literally am not able to sit in this wheelchair well enough to make myself some chicken soup. I also have some digestive issues that are documented on my chart, but, you know, I could get Meals on Wheels, but anyhow, I won't go into that. I'm just saying it's a miserable illness, and I'm not doing well, but I haven't given up, and I keep up with the research. So I feel like my housing is unsafe because, you know, I live in a house with 2 sets of stairs, and truthfully with a person who didn't believe in long COVID. And let me tell you what a hell of a few years I've had with somebody that thinks, well, I know she's sick, but probably her childhood. You know, probably she just doesn't eat enough, you know. So I don't have the money to move out of this place. If I did, I would have quite a while ago. I've been crawling up and down my stairs for a couple years now. I have to because the kitchen is here. So those of us with long COVID, we need help. You know, there are people dying of this illness. I don't want to be one of them. So I've persisted and fought with every doctor who tells me, oh, we don't know what to do about long COVID, just go home, you know, to get more assistance. And I've finally been admitted to something called a complex care clinic at my local clinic that allows me access to a social worker who tells me she's willing to do this application called Choices for Care, which is maybe assisted living or more help in the home. So I'm only bringing this up because, you know, again, you know, what happens when you, and I went from like 55,000 to slam, you know, life's tough. And that could happen to just about anybody. You know, I do have this home, and that's a blessing. I'd be homeless right now, but it's not a safe home for me, and it's hard for me to get out. I'm on the wait list with Champlain Housing Trust, and you know, as we know, you know, housing is hard. So this is what I feel is most important, and I'm sorry I take a while to say what I have to say, but there's a bigger picture here. And this is why I'm going to pour my heart out today. You know, it's not just about me. It's a sad story. But what's killing me when I'm in pain in bed all the time is all the other people I now know that are disabled like this and discarded. They're all fired. They're all clinging for it. Like millions of people have this. And we're frontline workers, right? You know, we were the ones that signed up and, you know, oh yeah, I'll do whatever. I got 3 mandated vaccines. I'm not anti-vaccine, but I'll tell you, I didn't want them. They fired me anyhow when I got long COVID. This is happening to millions of teachers, and early education teachers are broke. They do not make much money. Maybe you have a few that are making like, you know, they don't make school teacher money, and even school teachers aren't making a lot of money. And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter how much money you make anyhow once you're disabled. If we have repeat infections and COVID all the time, the research is really, really bad. Right now, 5.8 million American children have long COVID. It's after a COVID infection, 10 to 20% of children go on to have long COVID or some post-COVID health condition. That kills me. Nobody is talking about this. I mean, I worked for Head Start. Head Start is high, like health and safety is the foundation of everything else, right? If you don't have a healthy, safety body and home and everything, how are you going to learn life? How are you going to succeed in life? So for years through Head Start, we had bloodborne pathogen trainings. These are trainings designed to prevent us from catching HIV or hepatitis if somebody gets cut, at school or what have you. We were taught to, wear our gloves and, the goggles and all that sort of stuff. Where is the airborne pathogen training? Really? Where's the sick leave for teachers? Right now, they're telling kids to come to school COVID positive. That's in the state of Vermont regs, childcare regulation. Yes, you can be at school with COVID. The vulnerable teachers, I feel at this point, I'm calling people out. I'm calling out the Vermont education system, the Vermont Association for the Education of Young Children. It's something you need to speak out on, Department of Children and Families. You really need to rethink your regulations and start looking at the research on long COVID. Department of Education, everybody, whoever's overseeing the hospitals. I have a loved one right now with lung cancer, and there are employees coming in with no mask on. We are in a pandemic. What are you thinking? I just don't understand that, and I just want to really point out, I have my mask here. It's basically like washing your hands or wearing a seatbelt. It just takes getting used to. It's not a big deal, people. It's a mask. Put it on and I'm fine. It protects me. I wore one of these for 2.5 years. It wasn't a big deal. So anyhow, I want to say, I guess, calling out also Social Security Administration. Help us. Don't make us sick applying for disability. You need to come up with some sort of a quick process for long COVID. You really do. I mean, even RFK Jr. just had a roundtable on long COVID. He compared it to cancer and AIDS. So we need some urgency here. Medicare, we need telehealth, by the way. Like, how am I going to get to my doctor's appointment? The legal system, it's too hard. People that have less skills than me aren't going to be able to get in. So anyhow, so I'm here today. I know I said a lot, but I'm speaking out for the children because children get long COVID as well. And they're not even being identified in schools. Like, I know a lot of people that work in schools, they don't have any training whatsoever about identification with children with long COVID. And it's more common. It's the most common chronic childhood illness, surpasses asthma now. That's the journal in the American Medical Association, May 2025. So that is my piece. I guess I hope everybody will do better now that you know. And my name is Eileen.
Eileen, thank you so much. I have a couple of questions, but first I wanted to tell you I put hearts. That's my virtual way of sending.
I loved that.
Sending you a hug because we can't be in person and touch each other. So I just wanted to give you that heads up that if we were there, it would be.
Yes, I saw those. Thank you. That does so. Again, these are accessibility tools. Having remote work is important to me because I'm not well, so thank you. It still showed me some love. Thanks.
I'm just thinking about your incredible journey and the symptoms that you had initially and the initial disbelief you had from the doctors, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just summarizing. This is what I heard. And I don't know if I heard also, like, how were you able to sort of recognize that this would or could be potentially long COVID, and get yourself and start advocating for yourself in this direction? Because that's something that obviously you would have to be very self-aware. I think about people who have had fibromyalgia, for example, and people didn't believe that was a disease, right? And so people had to advocate for themselves and almost diagnose themselves.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder, how it came to you that you connected your symptoms to long COVID.
Yeah, that's important. I'm going to do another shout out for Lyme disease too, which is rampant in Vermont. And yet that's another thing. How is it that that's not, a majorly treated, anyhow, a lot of bias out there. I think one thing, and I actually do feel, I'm glad you asked me this question, and this is not because I want to have followers, but because knowledge is power, and I've learned a few things. I'm on Instagram, and I'm also public on Facebook, and even on Twitter and LinkedIn. So one thing I'm going to say is, please, if you have access to a smartwatch, and you feel comfortable, again, this is just my 2 cents. it's going to tell you things about, it told me my heart rate was elevated, like abnormally high, and I'd been wearing it for years. So that was the first sign. I was getting regular temperature and just alerts from it. I think also because I had never really been sick before, it was just so dramatically different. I move constantly. I used to run. I used to, eat kale and tofu and all the stuff that you thought was going to help and it didn't. So that's another myth, because I was super healthy. So it was just so dramatically different and persistent, like nothing I could do. Like I keep on getting sick, and I used to never miss work, and all of a sudden that was happening. I'm trying to think. I did start because my doctors kept dismissing me. That's when you start like, well, I guess I'm going to do some research. And I knew I had heard the word long COVID. I just didn't know enough about it. I remember early in the pandemic kind of talking to a friend saying, oh, my luck will be, I'll be the one that gets the long COVID, but not meaning it. So I did get it. So I think I just started researching, and that's where social media was helpful. And as much as it seems funny on Instagram, I was never big on it before. What you learn when you're disabled and you're bedbound is those are your people. And that's the way that we can still build community and have friendships. And the people in the myalgic encephalomyelitis community, it's called ME, and disrespectfully called chronic fatigue syndrome, because I'm not fatigued. I'm like incredible pain and swollen, and I got a brain problem. So but that community also reached out to the long COVID community to help them understand our illness. In my case, I'm also diagnosed with ME.
Thank you. Sorry, other commissioners pop in if you have something else, but I just started writing questions as you were speaking. You did touch upon this in your story, but I'd like to be really kind of direct in talking about what has been lost by your journey. That's really our theme in this space is about land and resources.
Yes.
And how much has been lost from your fight, just even the advocacy that you've had to put forth to do the paperwork and to navigate a system. You had to use a lot of energy to do that. And what was lost in that process? Can you speak to that?
I think so much was lost. I mean, the first thing that was lost was my health, because at a time when I don't know that I would have gotten fully better, but I don't think I would be in this condition had I not had to fight for my life at that period. And I still feel like I'm fighting for my life. But more concretely, the ability to support myself financially. So, I've strongly considered, maybe irrationally, but I've considered getting in my car and just driving somewhere. But you know what? I looked it up, because you do when you're desperate. It's not legal in Vermont. So I'm like, oh, well, so, I've lost my ability to be in a safe home. I don't have any ability to get myself to a different place. I kind of have to just deal with it. I live, again, the stairs are too hard for me. I have lost my career. I mean, I guess in terms of resources, though, I don't know what else one does lose other than those things, I've lost my ability to walk in the woods. I've lost my ability to pick up my granddaughter. But, I guess I will say it's a really shitty experience to work as hard as I have in life and not have a home to go to that I feel safe in. And this is not about throwing anybody under the bus. Again, it's like a physical reality in this home, It's, and there's a certain amount of, again, lack of belief. Because there's no public health speaking out on what long COVID is, the belief system in my household is, you must be getting better. We don't need a stair climber, and I don't have money for a stair climber. And even if I did, it doesn't appear to be something that is welcome in this home. So I've lost a lot.
Thank you for your courage to continue to share.
Yes.
I think the last one question we have is about recommendations. So what are the recommendations that you make for state agencies or?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking that. I really feel like the Vermont Department of Health needs to immediately um, start looking into the research and focus on giving public health guidance that's visible in all social media and very clear about how dangerous COVID infections are. It's a blood vessel disease. That's the problem. So that's why there's 200, 300 symptoms, because when your blood vessels are affected, well, it's just going to pick whichever body part it decides is the weak link at that moment. So, we need guidance. We need information about masking. Right now, that's all you really have. Vaccine, you need that information and access. That's a personal decision, but we need people to have information and access so they can make that decision. You absolutely need to mandate that all medical professionals have training on long COVID and post-COVID conditions. I am so tired of people telling me that my problem is anxiety. And I have a lot of diagnoses. But even the people that diagnose me somehow don't quite, they want to latch on to that. So we need training immediately. We need to look at clean air in hospitals, in schools, in nursing homes, and of course, childcare centers. This is actually engineering, it's science. It's about how much clean air exchange and what kind of HEPA filter you have, and do you have some UV lighting. The White House has great air quality. We need access to testing. We need a really clear message from the Vermont Department of Education and Child Care Services that COVID positive people are supported at home. And maybe they need resources. Maybe they need some they do need remote learning opportunities, because children do have it and they are going to experience flare-ups. To be pressured to go to school and in trouble if you want to do your screen time learning, they're not going to be able to do an 8-hour day in person. Not all of them. Some of them will. But we need identification first, which means you're going to have to train the teachers very quickly. Teacher unions, again, where are you? Maybe I just have missed something, but you got to stand up for the rights of the people. I'd like the Social Security Administration to basically make some sort of an emergency statement on long COVID that we're going to bypass some of these multiple appeals and court dates for people. It's ridiculous. The legal system, I don't know, maybe have a hotline for long COVID, because there's just so many millions of us that are going through what I'm going through. That bothers me. We need Medicare and we need telehealth flexibilities. We need therapy. We need therapy that we can have in our own homes. So, and maybe more access to health insurance, I guess I would say. Reinfections, I will say there was an article that just came out yesterday. Reinfections double the risk of long COVID in children. So prevention is key. Like, it's just really, they're just going to have to look at that. So I just want to say that's some of my recommendations.
Well, thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, of course.
Early educators, I'm sure teachers too, but you need sick leave, paid sick leave, and lots of it, as much as they need. Teachers want to teach. I was pressured. That was the other thing. Like, we basically fired people when they ran out of their sick leave. That sucks during a pandemic. So we need sick leave, paid sick leave. Big love to the teachers still teaching. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, everybody. Our facilitator has jokes. Thank you all for today. It was, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, a very profound day. And I appreciate all of you. We all appreciate you for listening and for witnessing today. We're going to eat together here soon. We're going to break bread together, because nourishment is so important when we're purging our pain. We need to be supplementing ourselves with food. Well, at least that's what I do. Other things. So I'm going to just close this out quickly and go around the room again. And this time, if everybody can give me, all of us, one word that they're that they're feeling in the moment. It could be something that you're taking away from today. Anything you desire. I'm going to start right here. I'm going to put Jean on. First. One word. Interconnected. Lovely. Representative Burrows. Okay. Commissioner. Community. I don't know your name, so I'm going to care. Pain. Fulfilled. Love it. Want to participate. Ease. Nice. Kathleen.
Gratitude.
Gratitude.
Reflective.
Reflective. Thank you. Jake. Togetherness.
I'm going to echo Kathleen, gratitude.
Gratitude. Thank you. I'm going to come down here in tables.
Powerful.
Powerful.
Unity.
Unity. Thank you.
Care.
Care.
Eye-opening.
Systemic.
Respect.
Compassion.
I would say eye-opening too.
Thank you, Sean. Commissioner.
Courage.
Courage. I think I'm going to echo that with something similar, bravery. And so don't forget words as you're living your everyday lives. We can't forget the words that were said here today, but we can hold that word close to our hearts and the words of others in this room. And again, I thank you again for standing with us. And I hope our food is ready. We can talk more while we share food. Thank you for coming.